Can you give us a little bit of a more intel into what actually is involved in the editing process?
It kind of depends on what kind of an editor you are. So I'm a substantive editor or a developmental editor or a structural editor, depending on what you want to call it. So for me, what it is it's problem solving your story, your plot, your characters, and all of those elements that tell your story from the first page all the way through to the last page. So it's a combination between working with kind of traditional story elements and working with those in your story, also combining those with your unique voice, your unique story, and your characters, and just making those all work together just to tell the best possible story. And then other editors are working with, or sometimes the same editor, but just in different edits, are working with stylistic editing, which is more moment-to-moment editing. So it's editing your chapters and your lines and like making sure you're telling the most beautiful story and that it's understandable and all of those elements. And then you get into copy editing and proofreading, which is the more nitty-gritty grammar and just fixing typos and that sort of stuff.
How do these different types of edits go together, and how does it trail from one to the next, or does it all happen at once?
It depends on your process, what works best for you and the editors that you're working with along the way. You're always going to want to start with a structural edit. I always compare it to kind of building a house. You don't want to choose your couch and put it in and do all of that sort of stuff before you decided where the walls are going to be, right? So, because you don't want to have to go back and redo work. So if you start with your structural edit and make sure your story works from start to finish, your character development works, your conflict works, your pacing works, all of those elements, once you have that in place, you can kind of move on to smaller edits. So then you can move on and you can look at what's my style as a writer, what's my voice, let's tweak and critique that sort of stuff and make it as good as possible. And then you can work your way down to, is this word spelled correctly? Is the continuity correct from the start of the book to the end? And all those little like bits and pieces that make sure the story is as perfect as it can be.
Okay, yeah, that's so helpful, especially for the people who publish or self-publish, because I imagine, you can let me know, but in traditional, they must walk you through it if you're, let's say, a debut author.
Yeah, I would say most common right now would be that you would do the developmental editing or most of the developmental editing on your own. Okay. And then you'll come to them with as polished a draft as possible, but they'll come in, they usually only really want to do one big round of edits before they go into the copy editing stage. So hopefully they're going to be working on more stylistic things with you rather than big plot and character things. So a lot of them are expecting that you're doing that developmental work on your own.
That's incredible. So that makes sense then, as a freelance editor, where that would be your niche very much, if it's something that should be done prior to actually querying.
Yeah, and I work with authors on both sides of the agenting side of things before they found an agent, or if they're not intending to find an agent with them, and also while they have an agent, while they're getting their draft ready to be sent out to publishers. Okay. And depending on your agent, some are willing to come in earlier in the process and some do want a more polished draft. Mm-hmm. So that's something you also have to look at if you're when you're sending stuff out.